Chronopunk, a novel, episode 10. Now the lawsuit has started. We are in court. Deborah is interrogating Ben Bernanke. Ben Bernanke is the only person that I chose for this novel, which is actually not a fictional character. So that is real. And I've been thinking about this quite a bit to make it a fully fictional novel where we have some different type of, chairman of the Fed and all that. And I decided not to do that because I think time, reality, all these concepts are kind of blurred in this novel because of the time travel conundrum or paradox. And therefore, I thought it's okay to have this ambiguity a little bit. So Ben Bernanke is in court being interrogated by Deborah Fiedler about printing money and appropriating unlawfully assets that don't belong to him or to his institution. There is a quote in this chat. This is the key chapter for people who are interested in the legal aspects of this situation. This is the key, and it's taken me quite a bit of research and also filtering and ablation. I could obviously write a PhD about the legal aspects of appropriating people's assets and following the Fifth Amendment or the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution because they prohibit this. And I think this is the really interesting discussion that can be had from a legal and ethical perspective, but mainly from a legal perspective. So here's the quote. The takings clause of the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution declares, "Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation." Okay. Moreover, the due process clauses of both the Fifth and 14th Amendments safeguard individuals from being stripped of their property without lawful procedure. Deborah continues, Mr. Bernanke, you opted to purchase bonds using funds that belong neither to you, nor to the Federal Reserve, nor to the U.S. government. There was no due process, nor has there been any mention of fair compensation. The plaintiff contends that your actions establish a precedent that will perpetuate further violations of the property rights of Americans, especially those of future generations. She continues, and the chapter ends and the episode. So this is the key legal argument here. The takings clause of the Fifth Amendment, which states, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. And then we have the 14th Amendment, which talks about due process. So in plain English, I am not allowed to take your assets for public use without compensating you. And in order to establish the process of how that happens, how I take it and how much I compensate you, there has to be a due process, right? So we have to set up the government can take, the government is in the position to take your property. Let's say you live on a coastal property in Hawaii and the Japanese are supposed to attack Hawaii. The government can come in and say, we have to take your property. We have to defend this island with your property. And here is the due process. This is how we're going to establish how we're going to do it. We're not just going to chain you in the basement and torture you to sign a contract to hand over this property. No, there's going to be a due process. There's going to be maybe an arbitration, or you're going to have a lawyer, we're going to have a lawyer, whatever. And then we're going to also have to compensate you. Let's say, investment bankers do this all the time. They look at comparables, right? Comparables meaning, okay, how much has been paid for similar properties in the past? How much are you foregoing? What's your opportunity cost? So this is the key argument, because what Ben Bernanke did with quantitative easing in 2008, when he started taking wealth from people, present and future, particularly future people. In other words, people that aren't even born, confiscating it without due process. This is the key argument. The whole book, the whole case, the whole whatever you want to name, everything hinges on this. And this is really what what inspired me to write this book. It's to put this point out there. There's a lot of ifs and whens and buts, like what does it even mean, future generations? We discussed this in the previous episode, right? Future and today is connected through DNA, for example. There's other ways to look at this. For example, what is life? What is a species? Are we like a forest where the trees are the humans and the forest is all the humans in a generation? In other words, are we all just one organism? My future and past generations are just part of one big organism, or is it just me individually? Are we fooling ourselves with our individualism? We could even go further. We could say this whole me, I, narcissism, this whole narcissistic society that we live in is actually destroying itself. And what we need is this continuity, which actually has been grounded in spirituality and religion. If you take some of the prevalent religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, they all propagate, or even, by the way, even all the other Eastern religions, Buddhism, and wherever you look, it's always about the whole. It's always about the continuity also of the family. For example, you have arranged marriages in Indian culture for exactly that reason. You want to make sure that the propagation of your particular strand of the species continues in a sort of controlled way. All these things have the same long-term, I would say, long-term objective, which is to make sure that for lack of a better word, the gene pool propagates properly. And we here in the West, we have this narcissistic, destructive society. Whether it manifests itself in this destructive lifestyle of drug abuse, hedonism, things like that. Which is exactly the opposite, right? It's all about me right now. It's about my feelings and about how I feel, and I don't care about my future generations. And what Bernanke did with QE was the financial equivalent of hedonism. He actually executed financial hedonism, destroying future prospects, taking wealth away from future generations in the name of present feel-good actions. This is the key argument here. Now, the whole novel hinges on the idea that the society, just let me recap a little bit what we discussed so far in the first 9 episodes. Moody gets sent back from 2064 into 2006 to prepare a lawsuit which launches in 2009, that's where we are right now in this episode, because Bernanke is going to start QE in 2008 in November, and he's going to launch the lawsuit to prevent him from doing this. And Deborah, in her statement, questioning Bernanke, says that we don't want, punishment. We're not asking for treason or anything like that. We just want this to stop because it's going to destroy our society, and we know that's going to happen. And there's a little tidbit also in this episode which I was a bit struggling if I should elaborate on this, and I chose not to, but I still wanted to leave it in there, which is this fine line that Deborah has to thread, which is she going to tell the jury in the court, that she knows for sure what's going to happen? Because for sure, Moody is telling her that he's coming back from the future, and he knows what's going to happen. We're going to have trillions and trillions of deficits and trillions of debt, and the society is going to be destroyed, and the fabric of society is going to be destroyed, and there's no other way than to stop QE, because that's the main reason why this whole thing is happening. Now, she has to thread this really fine line between telling the court that she knows what's going to happen, but not revealing Moody's true identity, and therefore she runs exactly in the typical sort of courtroom situation where the lawyer, which by the way is going to be introduced a bit later, the lawyer of Ben Bernanke, he's going to have a bit of a more prominent role in this episode. He just shows up sometimes with objection and things like that. So he's gonna utter an objection here, because he's going to say this is all speculation, right? And this is a very crucial moment in the novel where Deborah has to think twice while answering this. Well, honey, it's not really speculation. I know it's going to happen, but then for you guys in 2009, this sounds like speculation. So I leave this open. I leave this open for the reader to interpret also how to deal with this. And I don't want to go into the conversation of should we believe that Moody really comes from the future or not. I mean, it's an interesting question. You could ask yourself the same thing about people like Elon Musk or others, Einstein, like these types of really what we call geniuses, Dostoevsky. Did they come from somewhere else? I mean, they really are like, meteorites coming from other species, planets, maybe times, and enhancing our society, often in a good way. Lisa Meitner, the lady that discovered nuclear fission, I mean, she had huge impact on humanity, maybe bad one. Who knows how this is going to end up with nuclear power. But my point here is that this question is not being discussed. So to summarize, I think in this episode, we definitely are getting into the weeds of the legal aspect of the novel. We are discussing the most important legal argument, again, the Fifth Amendment, which basically says I can't take stuff away from me, the government. I can't take your property without compensating you properly. And the 14th, which is I can't do this also without due process. Thank you.